It's the Ask JP podcast with JP Morrell. Now, let's start the show. Here's JP.
Hello and welcome to the Ask JP podcast. We tackle the questions and issues of the day. The issue of the day is saltwater intrusion, but we're not going to talk about that yet because that's a whole separate hellscape we're not going to get into at this moment. So today we're having another conversation with a candidate for the newly relocated District 23, Mr. Bryan Jefferson, and we are really looking forward to what questions we have to throw at him and what answers he throws back at us. So Monet, please kick it off.
All right. So first question conglomerate that we're going to throw at you. Bryan, why did you decide to run for the state legislature? What makes you the best candidate for the job? And what do you see as the needs of the constituency that you're trying to represent in House District 23?
All right. Thank you, Monet, for that question. The reason why I decided to run is twofold. I'm a business owner in the district. My law firm is on Canal Street near the intersection of Carrollton. So I have a financial stake in the district. I'm there every day. I eat lunch there every day. I'm working there every single day. So I have a presence there every day. And I also have an intimate connection with the district because I grew up in the district. And I played football in the streets of that district growing up. We played football. There were no hockey seasons and baseball with us. We played football all the time. So I grew up, I broke my arm installing Park, so that's the main reasons why, or a couple of the main reasons why. I also really want to, I've got young people in my family, and I really want to make my concern with the city being a safer place, because the city is a different place, and that neighborhood or the neighborhoods are different than they were when I grew up in the idyllic 1970s and 80s as a child. So, and I want to return that to that. As far as why am I the best candidate? I practiced law for going on 30 years, and like I say, if you do anything for 30 years, whether you want to or not, you become good at certain things just by doing it for so long. And throughout that 30-year period, I've had the privilege and the honor of representing individuals. I don't represent really companies or corporations or anything like that. And by representing a wide array, you can imagine the different types of people with the different types of backgrounds throughout the city, throughout the state, and really the Gulf Coast, all right? I have a certain experience and talent with bringing people together, people with competing interests. And I think a legislator, one of the main jobs of a legislator is you can come up with the best ideas for laws and bills that you want to, which is important. However, if you can't convince other legislators to come with you, to join with you and push them through committee and make those bills laws, then you're in dead water, so to speak. So I think that I'm the best candidate as far as the experience is in that aspect of getting that done. And I hope I answered your question.
No, that's
Yes,
that's a very, very, very thorough answer. Let's get into some of the issues that are concerning the District 23. What is your stance on abortion? And please be very specific. As you know, that we're in the South, so people have like abortion plus asterisk positions, and we just want to let the voters clearly know what your stance is on that issue.
I can't be as clear as this. I am pro-choice, but it's very simplistic. It's a medical decision to me. I think a patient and a physician's relationship when it comes to a medical issue is private, and it's only between that patient and the physician. So if you get a lady who's seeking an abortion with a doctor, that falls under that ambit. And it's nobody's business except that patient and that privilege and that physician as far as advice. So I'm pro-choice. As far as being in the Deep South, yes, I'm aware of where we are, and particularly the climate here in Louisiana. It's very difficult, or impossible if you think about it from a legal standpoint, because abortions are outlawed here. And I think that's very unfortunate. But I hope I answered that question.
No,
Very
I think
clear.
that's about as clear and as concise as you could possibly be.
Can I add one more thing, Big?
Yes, absolutely.
If men could get pregnant, I don't think we'll be dealing with this issue.
You are a million% correct. If I made the joke that when we were doing the pink tax up and down about whether or not to tax menstrual pads and diapers, and we're fighting over it with the legislature, I said, it is asinine to me how much we argue over whether women should be taxed on menstrual pads, but men are not taxed on Viagra. And many of the men just started looking side to side, like, I don't want to talk about it. It's like, no, I mean, if it affected you, you would care, but since it doesn't, you don't. And so I think that's a great point. I'm sure Monet has got a great follow-up question.
Well, switching topics from menstrual products per se, let's talk about water, because saltwater wedges and intrusions are all on my mind. So the BGR, Bureau of Governmental Research, recently released a report this year highlighting the need for reorganization and reforms throughout the Sewage and Water Board. Being that Sewage and Water Board is this weird Frankenstein quasi-state entity, how do you see your role in addressing inefficiencies throughout the organization?
Once again, like you said, it's a state quasi-organization. So, and I know a little about that BGR report. I haven't read it thoroughly, but I've read about it. And there are two ways of looking at it. Redoing the current makeup with a set of reforms, or just completely converting the Sewage and Water Board into a city department. And perhaps from what I'm reading, the consensus is that the most non-problematic, not that it doesn't have its own issues, would be the former in setting reforms. I am cognizant about my audience that I'm looking at least, because outside of Monet, we've got a city council member here that I'm talking to, and I don't mean to slight anyone by what I'm about to say.
Which means you're inevitably about to slight me. That's fine. It's like when someone goes, no offense, and you're like, oh, I'm about to be offended. That's like the heads up.
Here comes the offense.
Well, let's hear it.
This is a safe space. It's a safe space. Safe space.
So we got the board, right? We've got 11 seats. We got the mayor as president. We've got the city council person having a seat, and then we've got 9 citizens, right? So when I'm dealing with looking
well,
at,
I would only add one caveat. You've got 9 other people picked by the mayor directly.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Is that clarification? Okay.
And that's an important one, because that's another layer upon what I'm about to say. You know, when you get into relationships with getting things done, right? Sometimes the mayor's position, as it relates to the city council's position, they can be at odds or have different opinions. So simply by having that makeup, it can lead to inconsistent results for whatever reason. And politics may play into this some sort, or to some extent. I have a note here that the council is in charge of approving rate increases and bond issuances for the agency. And that
that's
those
correct.
decisions,
Well, they vote on proposals for bond and rate increases, then it comes to us for ratification. That's correct.
got it. And that those decisions can often be led by political considerations, not wanting to raise the rates before an election. That some people, now I'm not saying, trying to say that's
a BGR position on it.
Yes.
So I mean, I think to couch the council's position against rate increases as pure politics, that's certainly the Sewage and Water Board's position. But I would argue, council members are very cognizant of how much property taxes are, how much energy bills are, how much sewage and water bills are. And I think the impasse we've reached in the last couple of years, even before I got on there, is that the Sewage and Water Board wants the council to pass rate increases, and the council's like, we'll let the people vote on rate increases, but we're not going to vote on rate increases because many of us see a rate increase as a tax. And if it's a tax, right, we don't think any third party, whether the Sewage and Water Board or the council, should be voting around people to tax them. And I think that's created an impasse because Sewage and Water Board would much rather the council vote on a rate increase than the public, but only the public knows what they're willing to tolerate when it comes to the pressures of the financial cost of living in the city of New Orleans. Yeah, that's just our perspective. I know from our current council.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair way of looking at it. And then when you look at the mayor being the president and having some role in appointing those 9 citizens, those seats, that the presence of the city, and this is from the BGR also report, that the presence of the city's most powerful elected official can discourage the free flowing of exchange of ideas, limiting effectiveness. Now, I'm not saying that that's always the case, but potentially that could be a possibility. So that goes to the way it's made up. Now, I don't know if there have been any studies with saying, let's remake this whole board, and one way we can remove any of these issues is by making them all 11 spots being appointed positions, sort of like administrative law judges are. And then the question is, well, who would appoint them all? I think it's almost impossible to really expect to get a group of people together and to expect that there won't ever be any differences of opinions based on politics or the amount of power or influence that a person may have. But I would definitely propose studies to look into what would be the best way of doing this. Not to say, and I'm just going to throw this in really quickly, I didn't know it when I was a kid why my mom would do this, but I have 3 sisters, and I can remember being in the grocery store checking out, and the candy is right there by the cash register, and I wanted Snickers, and my sister wanted this, and my mama said, no, y'all agree on one. And I was like, Mama, you got money, why can't you just buy both? She was doing that. We were forced to either make it work and have candy, or stand our ground and leave out with no candy. So I don't want to ramble on. I hope
I think the idea, obviously I lean towards more the former of, I think that we shouldn't have a sewage and water board. We should have a Department of Public Works like every other parish. But if you're going to have one, I'll give you a great point to support what your position is. The president of the Sewage and Water Board is elected by the membership, but it has never not been the mayor. That tells you that even though technically it's supposed to be this democratic body that is like not beholden to the person who appoints, even when mayors, for the most part, never attend the meetings, the mayor's always the president because the membership, and even after I did some reforms with Mitch Landrieu back in the day, I did 2 rounds of that, it didn't change the fact that the Sewage and Water Board is mostly beholden to the mayor. And to your point, it's very hard. I'll give you something I always tell people. You could tell Sewage and Water Board is disconnected in that it's a public body that has its public meetings in a boardroom that no one can fit in but them. When you were younger, and you're a little older than me, and I was younger, the Sewage and Water Board used to meet in the city council chambers. So when people were mad about their bills, they go sit in the chambers and they go say their piece. Right. After Katrina, Sewage and Water Board stopped meeting in the city council chambers. And when you look at a lot of the decision-making and policy positions, the fact that It took us 2 years of fighting to get billing kind of sort of in a place that's reasonable. If they were forced to deal with the public like the council is, you would think they might actually realize that. I mean, what I tell Sewage and Water all the time is you should be helping us help you, because their approval rating's at 14% and they have millage renewals due in 27. You're a constituent. I'm a constituent, ratepayer, Sewage and Water Board. Do you think that anyone will pass a millage for Sewage and Water Board in 2027 if things stay the way they are? I mean, so it's incumbent upon all of us, the legislature and the council and everybody, and Sewage and Water Board, to help get their act together. So at the very least, the public, when they are looking at that millage renewal in 27, are going, are they doing a good job versus I just hate them? And right now, I feel like when I talk to people, they're not even looking at what job they're doing. They're looking at their messed up bills. They're looking at these other things that are peripheral, and they're not even looking at the drainage issues or infrastructure issues under the street. But to your point, I think that's a great idea. I mean, it's a hard thing to go through, and I applaud you for saying that's one of the things you want to tackle. As far as like, how could you have an appointment process where the mayor and the council are so like the two bad kids arguing in the line and us having to settle for somebody? That's an excellent metaphor for dealing with a lot of issues with the mayor and the council. I mean, both sides kind of stand their ground to the point where we both cut off our nose to spite our face, when if we were forced to have resolutions that were finite, negotiate, it'd probably be better for everybody. It's a good point.
Right.
Favorites. Should marijuana be legalized for recreational use? Oh, I do want one clarification that Monet has not disclosed. She is a voter in District 23.
Yes.
So as you're answering these questions, you're also trying to get a vote. I'm not in your district, but she's in your district. So sell her.
One thing I have to work on is, from time to time, I speak my mind too much, and I need to keep. One thing I know, if I'm afforded the opportunity to go to Baton Rouge, I'm going there for the citizens of District 23, not for Bryan Jefferson. So, but from time to time, I particularly in these forums or meet and greets, if someone has asked me a question, I really give them my honest opinion, where it may be smarter from a vote gathering standpoint to sort of give them my opinion a certain way. Now, having said that, I'm gonna give you my opinion on this. I believe marijuana should be legal for recreational use. When you think about, none of us were around back in Prohibition. Think how ludicrous it sounds right now for a person to be breaking a law by making beer or possessing beer. Think about how ludicrous that sounds. So in about 40, 50, 60 years, we're gonna look so stupid having recreational marijuana illegal. We're gonna look silly. At the same time, we are passing up a golden opportunity to fix some of our main problems. What do I mean by that? Throwing money at certain issues may not fix the issue, but it makes it a lot better than it is or was. Oftentimes, you got a problem. You can take marijuana, legalize it for recreational use, tax it to the hilt, sin tax, whatever you want to call it. Take that revenue. Your education system is broken. You want to attract top-notch teachers, pay them high rate wages, use those taxes to do that. Use those taxes for your streets or whatever. That's a source that we can't get. Now, when you look around the country even, we are always behind. You know, when you look at California and Colorado, when this issue has come up way back in the past, and they've addressed this. But it seems like Louisiana, and we're part of Louisiana, we eventually come aboard, but we're never 1, 2, or 3 in line. We're always in the last third of the line when it comes up. And some of these things are inevitable. I can even take it one step further. I would be a proponent to studies as to should other substances be made legal for recreational use also, in order to get that tax money and tax revenue to fix other problems that we have with schools and our infrastructure. I don't know, I'm not being specific as to what, but that's the purpose of studies to do it. But definitely to be direct with your answer, yes, we should do it, because guess what? It's gonna happen whether we do it or not. We may as well do it now and move forward and not look ludicrously silly to our people further down the line.
Yeah.
Let's go to how do you plan to address the unsustainable rise in homeowners insurance premiums? And I always look for interesting lawyer answers. So give me your lawyer answer.
All right, my lawyer answer. Homeowners insurance. The simple way of looking at it is competition. Insurance companies are in the business of making money, just like we are in the business of going to work and being paid or compensated for a hard day's work. So they have to balance with not paying a lot of claims and bringing in a lot of premiums. So with that as the backdrop, the more insurance companies that are in the field to compete for our business, the better rates and premiums that we can get. So the easy answer is we need to bring more insurance companies back. Then the question is, well, how do we bring them back? Well, we have to convince them that this is a market, a ripe market that you can come back into and make money and make a profit. There's a fortified roof program in Louisiana now that studies have shown that the damage from hurricanes comes from the top to the bottom. You do have water intrusion when a street floods and the water comes in, but when a roof is ripped off and then the water is dumped into the structure, that's a lot of damage. And if you can fortify those roofs, you can limit the amount of damage. You know, you may get windows blown out, but you're not going to have that same amount of damage. And that gives grants to homeowners to fortify their roofs. And if insurance companies can look at that and then parlay that into saying, hey, that's going to be less claims because they've got stronger roofs. Let's get back into that system and do it that way. And everybody likes an incentive. Or like in the 7th Ward, everybody likes a hookup. So insurance companies getting more incentives to come back into the market, definitely. But JP, a lot of people aren't talking also about this, about auto insurance, but I think we can cross that bridge another time, but there are certain things that can be done to that type of insurance. But to answer your question as to homeowners, that's my response. I hope I answered it.
No, you answered it, Mona.
All right. How would you describe the current status of gay rights here in the state of Louisiana?
Just like we were just talking about prohibition, you know, I remember when I was in high school, and I know I'm not trying to say that I'm ancient, but you know, no one, when it was time, it was very important is, you know, are you going to ask somebody to go to the dance, or did somebody ask you to go to the dance, or is who's going to the winter formal or the prom with that person? It was always boy, girl, right? I know that there were gay people when I was in high school, but no one was brave enough to go to the proms and the winter formals together as a couple. In today's world, that's completely different. So with time, we get better socially, and with, in my mind, showing that we have common sense and compassion. Just like we were talking about prohibition, we're always behind. This is another example of how Louisiana is behind in things, although liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, everybody has a gay person in their family or close associates. So yet we still have this discriminatory sort of like feel. The perfect example of the climate of gay rights in Louisiana, it just happened. You have these anti-LGBTQ laws that are enacted. The governor does the right thing and vetoes them. And then the legislature just takes that veto, throws it down and says, heck no, this is the way it is. So that's a perfect example of where we are, and it's a perfect example of what we need to run away from.
Okay. I think this would be an interesting question. What would you say to a recent college graduate who is questioning whether they should stay in Louisiana?
I can give you my personal experience on that. When I graduated from LSU, I left and I went to New York because I just couldn't, the pay here was just not up to snuff. So I went to New York, and then I came back home to go to law school, but I was not gonna stay here. I was a common law student. I was going back to New York. While I was in law school, summers, I went back to New York and clerked at a law firm there. But then eventually, because of personal reasons, I decided to stay here. So what I would tell a person is, your mom and your daddy want you to stay. We need our brightest and youngest here. But you have to do what's in your best interest and in the best interest of your family. But always remember, you're always needed here. We need you at home. And I'm a perfect example. If you can't stay, there's always an avenue to come back. But find your best. I'd also say this city is a lot different than it was in the 90s, as late as the 90s or before Katrina. There are a lot of people here now that didn't play in the streets playing football like me, because they were born and raised somewhere else. And then they came here in part due to Katrina and the recovery. And then they decided, you know what? I love this city. I love this culture. I want this to be my home. And New Orleans has benefited from that inclusion, like it is always. We're built on inclusion since its inception, really. So I rambled off, and I'm off the beat.
I think you gave a clear path. I mean, essentially, and I think that's kind of a common theme. Like, we'd always prefer that our best and brightest stay here, but at the same time, it's very hard with a clear conscience to tell someone who has better opportunities somewhere else. Or what we always hear, which is true, is if you don't feel safe here and you feel like you have to go for now, then you might need to go for now. But you're right. The thing about Louisiana and New Orleans in particular is people always find their way back if they can get back. Everybody comes back if they can get back. We used to have the running gag when I was in high school. When I was in high school, everyone moved away for college. Everyone spent 3 or 4 years away. And when I went to my last 25-year reunion, almost everybody was back in New Orleans. But like you said, it's very different now. New Orleans always succeeded by inclusion, and it's hard to have that same messaging when the state of Louisiana is so exclusive. It makes it very hard. Whereas New Orleans, you always be like, come here and be your true self. Now the state's like, we don't want your true self here. So it's just, it's hard. I mean, it's hard. Monet?
Yeah. All right. I think this is going to be our last question where we get to the closing. So it is very possible that the governor's race will go towards a Republican this fall on October 14th, or even the runoff. How do you, as a Democratic lawmaker, plan to pursue your policy goals with a Republican governor and even a Republican supermajority in the legislature?
I keep it very simple. I accept certain things. I accept New Orleans is below sea level. I accept we get certain rains, a certain amount of water. There's no way around that. I don't believe whistling as I go by the cemetery can fool anybody. You know, if I'm scared, I'm gonna run past it. I'm gonna be real to myself. The Republicans have a majority. They're on the cusp of having a supermajority. There is nothing any Democratic legislature, no matter how tenured he or she is or talented, can do without Republican assistance. That's just the way it is now and for in the near future. Things may change, I hope, and they will change, but that's the layout now. So, very simplistically, if you treat people the way you want to be treated, if you can put your pride on the side and make concessions, and you have to find common ground. There's no way around this unless you find common ground. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. With the abortion deal, I told you how I feel about that. Now I can get on a bully pulpit and scream ideologies and all that kind of stuff and rah, 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 sis, boom, bah. That sounds good at a Democratic rally, but from a practical standpoint, what is that really going to achieve? So abortion is illegal, but isn't it very unfortunate and changeable that there shouldn't be exceptions for rape and incest and medical emergencies and things like that that a clinician or a medical expert would deem? Because we all have common issues. Even Republicans have common issues. And they can be pro-life, but if a loved one or a constituent was a victim of rape and incest, although they may be pro-life, they may say, you know what? I can really see where this really, really, really doesn't fit the program, and that we may change. So we need to zero in on a common ground deal and understand that if we disagree 95% of the time, don't dwell on that. Concentrate on the 5 and make it 6 and 10 and just improve on that. That's the way I would reach across the aisle.
Okay. Well, now's the time for your closing. So if you have any last minute pitches to your constituent over here, potential constituent, as to why you think you're the best candidate and why you think that you're the one that could best serve, this is the time to do the final pitch.
Without a doubt. I want to thank y'all for giving me this opportunity. I took a particular route to be here today. I didn't run for office and then practice law for 29 years. I flipped it and did it the other way. And I'm not sure that there's any right way of doing it other than I'm not a seasoned politician. I'm a real voter, like a regular voter, a regular citizen, a regular person who owns a business, who's running that business, who wants a safe environment, who wants a good school system, and things of that nature. From a personal standpoint, I'm from this district. I went to Epiphany, St. Aug, LSU in Baton Rouge, Loyola Law School. Like I alluded to earlier, I'm an only boy. So, and I have 3 sisters. So I've said this before too. I've always been a minority, so to speak, in more ways than one. Like the girls always controlled anyway. So my daddy was heavy in the union with the ILA. He was a longshoreman on the riverfront. And it was, when I was little, I thought all men, when I grew up, I was gonna work on the river because all of my uncles, my grandpa, my daddy, everybody worked on the riverfront. And my mama was a nurse. So we're just regular 7th Ward, like tight family growing up here in the city. And I saw, when I grew up, I compared, when I see the movie Crooklyn, the streets where I grew up were similar to that. And I don't really see that in neighborhoods anymore. And I want that to return. And I want to play a role in that, in returning our city to that. And we can do it district by district, but I'm also a proponent of, when I'm talking about all of this inclusion in studies and stuff like that, I don't see, and JP, you may be able to correct me, but I don't know that the New Orleans City Council meets with the St. Bernard Council or the Jefferson Council, even if it's informally. But I think that
it's I believe one time in the last like 4 years, the council in New Orleans and Jefferson held a joint meeting. It's something that's always been pitched, but it's never really happened. Honestly, there's not even a regular meeting of the New Orleans City Council and the legislature, which is something that Jimmy and Harris and I are trying to correct, just because everybody in this region should be on the same page. I see where you're going. We all should be on the same page because we all have the same challenges, geographically, climate change, social. Crime doesn't know parish lines, but we don't do enough to work together as a group.
And I believe that legislators from New Orleans should get together with legislators from Cato Parish or Alexandria or whatever too from time to time, because as a state, we're all in this together. So I have some really bright, fresh ideas, and I'm really I'm not a politician. I'm just a seasoned attorney who wants to do good, and I've chosen this as my avenue or mode of getting there. And I humbly ask the citizens of District 23 for their help and their support and their votes.
Well, that's an excellent closing. We appreciate you being here, Bryan. Thank you so much for joining us on Ask JP, and we look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail, and good luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for having me. Y'all have a good day.